tired of telling their story over and over again, first thing I ask them to do is to take a deep breath. And then I ask them to slow down their speech because I know what they're doing. They're trying to pick out certain parts of their story that they can tell that will activate the person that they're speaking to help them. If you don't pick out the correct words and the person say, well, I'll just give you a call back, then you know you have failed. So therefore now you have to make another call, build up your courage to try to get this next person to help you, hoping you will make the right decision in what you say in your story this time. But after the trauma, you don't have to worry about that. So I call the organization in their state. We do a three-way call to make sure that all parties are connected and understand what resources they have available and what the person who is requesting the resources can get and how fast they can get them. Then we ask that we create a liaison with that organization and with that victim or survivor so that we can stay in contact with them. Then we do follow-up emails to make sure everything is going good, and that's what we do.
That's a great service to have, Mildred, because you touched on some really key points there. And once victims have maneuvered the system, they are tired, they're worn out, because in most cases, it's not straightforward what the survivor, what the victim needs to do in order to get help.
Right, it's not. There was a lady that called me yesterday from Texas. She is living in a shelter, 2 children. Her husband is in prison. And she called me because someone else referred her to me. She needed to get a plan in order to move forward with her life. And I told her that getting a plan is the most essential part of moving forward from being a victim to a survivor. Because if you don't have a plan, I'm not talking about a safety plan, I'm talking about a plan for your life. If you don't have a plan on how you're going to move forward, and I come to you for help, you ask me, what do you want to do? I say, I don't know. Now you are going to go about the business of making a plan for me. Well, I don't want you to do that because that means that I'm going to have to submit to your agenda in what you think I should be doing when really I'm the best person that knows what I need to do. So what I told her to do was to make a daily plan. This is what you're going to do today so that you can see where your time is going in the shelter, and then make an overall plan of how you're going to move forward. So this is what she and I are doing. I gave her some steps to take to do. She's going to do those things, and then she's going to call me back on Friday, and we're going to go over them to make sure that she understands what she is going to do. I'm not giving her a plan. This is her own plan that she is devising herself based upon her own circumstance. I'm only here to help her in the resource finding and to asking her specific questions to bring out more of what she is striving to do. So if you are a victim of domestic violence, if you are a survivor of domestic violence, and you don't know what you want to do, I would say stop, get a plan on what you want to do, and then move out on your plan.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that as victims of domestic violence, we find ourselves going back into the same situation because of lack of planning.
Lack of planning and finances. Because I'm not going to go into a shelter and the shelter looks worse than where I live.
Right.
I'm just not going to do that. And I have children in tow. And if I have a son that's 7 years or older, the shelter's not going to take my son anyway. Mm-hmm. So then where does my son go?
Right.
I'm not going to send him to a shelter for men. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go back home.
Mm-hmm. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about your memoir, Scared Silent, that was released in the latter part of last year. The title is such a powerful title because I believe it expresses the very experience of victims of domestic violence and abuse. Can you give us a little bit of insight into your book?
Well, my story is about the abusive, emotionally abusive relationship between me and John. And I go through how our relationship progressed, and that the turning point was when he went to Saudi Arabia, and when he came back, he was not the same person that left. And most times when soldiers leave to go to a war zone, the families are not properly prepped to let them know that the person that has left them is not going to be the same person that comes back, and vice versa. Because if I'm a dependent and I am here to handle the bills and the day-to-day activities of the home so sufficiently, then my intimate partner comes back. Now we're clashing heads because they were in a war zone. I'm here in the United States in peacetime, and now we don't know how to live together anymore. So now you got frustrations and disappointments, and that is the breeding ground for domestic violence. And so I believe that debriefing needs to take place for the soldier that is returning from a war zone, so that he or she can understand the dynamics of their adrenaline being heightened in a war zone versus being settled in peacetime, so that they can understand that it's not going to be as emotional an experience on a day-to-day as it was in a war zone. They need to be debriefed, and families need to come together to understand each other, because domestic violence is rising in the military community, and I'm not understanding why it's not being addressed more than what it is.
I agree that the military community is a community that's being neglected, and even for my own personal reasons, I come from a military family. You have men and women that join the military for many reasons, and some of them have already troubled past, and then they enter the military, and then they develop even more issues during the course of their service. What advice do you give to military families that are experiencing domestic violence?
You know, that's a difficult question, because if I'm a dependent and my husband wants, or my wife wants to make this a career, I can't go to his commander or the chaplain, because the first thing they're going to do is pull him in and ask him or her, okay, these are the allegations that are brought before us from your spouse. What do you have to say about it? Because this recently happened where we had a victim that I was working with other organizations to try to find shelter for. And she went to his commander and reported it. He went home and beat her viciously. And she had to leave with the clothes on her back with her son. So now we had to put her in hiding because she did the right thing, which was to report it. There's another lady in Texas. She fled from this area to Texas because she went to the soldier's commander and he beat her. So if this is the case, then I would say that they need to find someone that they trust to go with them to the commander and to help him or her to understand that you can't just call that soldier in there and not expect a repercussion after. There has to be accountability somewhere when reporting. But the military have their own laws and how they deal with this, and it's so different than the civilian law. If you are in the military, you are a victim of domestic violence, you should seek the domestic violence counselor or organization that is outside of the military community. So I believe that is where you will get your best help.
Mildred, like you mentioned, it is a tough issue because of the dynamics that you mentioned, the differences between the military life and the military ways of operating versus the civilian. I do thank you for sharing your insight on that issue. As we wrap up our program today, how can listeners reach you?
They can reach me on my email, which is the best way because I answer all emails, and that is afterthetrauma@yahoo.com. You can go to my organization as well. Website is www.afterthetrauma.org. And if you'd like to know my schedule, because I am a national spokesperson for domestic violence traveling the country, you can go to www